Elijah Cole had always been a man who fit quietly into the corners of life, not because he lacked presence, but because he chose to move through the world softly, like a man unwilling to disturb the fragile balance of things. He grew up in Rockview, a town that looked peaceful from the outside. White painted fences, porches lined with rocking chairs, Sunday church bells that sang over hills. But behind its small-town charm lay generations of unspoken bitterness, envy, and hidden cruelty. Elijah understood suffering in a way he never spoke about. He lost his mother at 12, his father 2 years later. By 16, he was alone in a town that barely noticed him. People saw his gentle eyes and calm posture and assumed he needed protecting. Yet no one ever stepped forward to actually protect him. Silence became his companion, and he learned to pour himself into small, steady things. Books, old music, fixing clocks, mending torn pages, sweeping floors no one else cared enough to clean. His bookstore was his sanctuary, Cole's Haven, a place filled with soft lights, the dusty perfume of old paper, and the kind of quiet broken only by turning pages. It wasn't successful, but it survived. Elijah loved survival. It was one of the few things he was an expert at. And then there was Damien Hunt. The town loved Damien. Rockview adored him the way people adore the sun, blindly, foolishly, even when it burns them. He was the factory owner's son, captain of the high school football team years ago, the man who walked into rooms expecting applause. Damien had always hated Elijah, from childhood into adulthood. Maybe because Elijah never worshipped him like the others. Maybe because Elijah's calmness made Damien confront his own emptiness. Or maybe because some people need someone to break just to feel tall. For 27 years, Elijah endured. Damien shoved him in hallways at school, mocked him during adulthood, vandalized the bookstore twice, spread rumors about him, whispered lies with a casual cruelty only a man drunk on attention could wield. People believed Damien because Damien spoke loudly and Elijah spoke rarely. We don't fear the loud man. We fear the quiet one, when silence finally ends. It happened on an evening soaked in the color of dying sunlight. Elijah had just locked the bookstore, fitting the key gently into the old brass lock, when he heard footsteps behind him, heavy, arrogant, uneven. And then a voice. "Still alive, Eli? I swear you're like a weed, always growing where nobody wants you." Damien, and he wasn't alone. 2 men laughed behind him, his friends, or rather men who laughed to stay on his good side. Elijah didn't turn at first. He simply breathed, slowly, deeply. He tried to be calm. He tried to be the Elijah he'd always been, the one who swallowed pain and said nothing. But then Damien shoved him, harder than ever before. Elijah stumbled into the bookstore window. Glass trembled. His palms stung. Behind him, laughter erupted like fireworks. But Elijah didn't laugh. He didn't apologize. He didn't back away. He turned, and for the first time in his life, he did not look away. Damien saw something he had never seen in Elijah's eyes. Not anger, not hatred, but a tiredness so deep it was bottomless. A man with nothing left to lose. A man who had carried everyone's insults like stones in his heart. A man who finally realized he had been trying to protect a world that never protected him. Damien sneered. "You think you're about to grow a spine now? You think you're something?" He grabbed Elijah's shirt and whispered, "You'll always be nothing." It was the final thread. Something inside Elijah, quiet, patient, bruised, gave way. What happened next was so fast that later no one could fully explain it.
Elijah's hand moved like a bolt of instinct, knocking Damien's arm aside with force no one thought Elijah possessed. Damien stumbled backwards, right through the bookstore window. Glass exploded outward like falling stars. People gasped from porches. The street fell silent. Even the crickets paused. Damien sat on the ground, bleeding, his eyes wide, not from pain, but from confusion, from fear, from the realization that his favorite victim had just shown him a truth he never expected, that the quietest man in town carried storms in his blood. Elijah stepped forward, not threatening, not raging, just stepping. His voice was low, steady, shaking only from the weight of years. You don't get to break people and walk away smiling. Not anymore. The world seemed to shift around those words. Some swore the air grew warm, others swore it froze. A priest crossing the street later claimed, half whispering, half trembling, that he felt the heavens hold their breath and the shadows beneath the church tremble. He said it was as if two great forces paused to witness a moment that tipped the scale of a man's destiny. Elijah didn't hit Damien again. He didn't yell. He didn't even raise his hands. He simply turned and walked away. But every step he took felt like thunder, felt like a man reclaiming himself after decades of shrinking, felt like the world was finally, painfully, beautifully forced to acknowledge him. And that was only the beginning. The next morning, Rockview woke up buzzing like a disturbed hive. Some said Elijah was dangerous now. Others said he did what everyone had been secretly longing to do. Some whispered that Damien had pushed him too far, and the quiet man broke. Others whispered he didn't break. He awakened. The town's balance shifted. People who never noticed Elijah now watched him in awe and nervous respect. Customers entered the bookstore, walking gently as if stepping into a sacred place. Even the sheriff approached him with careful words, asking what happened. Elijah just said, "I had enough." And the sheriff, a man who'd known Elijah since childhood, nodded with unexpected understanding. But the story didn't end with one shattered window. For a lifetime of science doesn't end quietly. It ends like a man finally exhaling after holding air for too long. As days passed, something strange happened. Damien began unraveling. His confident walk turned into a cautious shuffle. He stopped showing up at bars, stopped bragging, stopped smiling. The man who once acted like he owned the town couldn't step outside without glancing over his shoulder. Not because Elijah threatened him, Elijah never did, but because guilt, fear, and the loss of dominance became a prison Damien built around himself. Elijah, meanwhile, changed too, not in loud ways, but in subtle, powerful ones. He stood taller, spoke with calm authority. People listened. People respected him. People saw him. Rockview wasn't used to that. One evening, a stranger visited the bookstore, an older man with a heavy coat and eyes that had seen too much. He said he'd heard about the incident, said he knew what it meant for a quiet man to finally release what he had been burying. He offered Elijah something, an opportunity, a path, something that felt mentorship, part warning. Elijah didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. The story stretched over weeks, each moment revealing a different side of Elijah the town had never cared enough to know. A man who had suffered silently, a man filled with loyalty, grief, suppressed strength, and a moral compass sharper than any blade. Rockview began to reconsider itself, its bullies, its silence,
its traditions, its cruelty. Because Elijah had not simply snapped, he had exposed the truth about how the town treated its gentle souls. And Damien? He was no longer the same man. The fall from power broke him more than any punch ever could. He avoided Elijah, avoided mirrors, avoided people. The golden boy rusted in his own shame. One night, months after the incident, Elijah found Damien waiting outside the bookstore. Not to fight. Those days were gone. He came to apologize. His voice cracked. His pride was gone. He bowed his head like a man begging at an altar. Elijah listened, quietly, patiently, as always. Then he said softly, "You were never my enemy, Damien. You were your own." And somehow that mercy hurt Damien more than any revenge ever would. That night, the priest swore he felt a warmth pass through the town, a kind of celestial exhale, as if heaven finally let go of its breath. And somewhere, deeper, darker, hell grinned, not out of triumph, but out of respect for a man who walked through fire without letting it consume him. Because when a quiet man snaps, the world doesn't end. The world changes, not through destruction, but through revelation. Elijah Cole remained gentle, but no one ever mistook his gentleness for weakness again. His silence became something people listened to. His bookstore flourished. His life, once shadowed, became something others gravitated toward. And Damien, he became a different man, humbled, quieter, almost human for the first time. In the end, Elijah's breaking point wasn't a moment of rage. It was a moment of awakening, a reminder that even the softest souls have limits, and when they reach them, heaven and hell pause to see what becomes of the man who finally chooses to rise. For Elijah rose, not to destroy, but to live. And the world, Rockview, heaven, hell, destiny itself would never forget the night a quiet man finally snapped.